After uploading the last image of the Orion Nebula, I received some requests to show the way how I stack and edit my images. What I would give to have autofocus. Before we get started in Photoshop, let me explain the software for stacking. I use Astropixel processor for initial stacking and adjustments. This software has quite a hefty price tag, but don't freak out. If you have some good quality data, you can still get the same results in Deep Sky Stacker. But I love APP for its ability to normalize and correct faulty images. And I also love it for the star color calibration tool, which can give your nebula images a completely new touch. But I think most of you don't use APP, and I think that most of you know how to use Deep Sky Stacker. That's why I will start with the stacked image in Photoshop. If you want a tutorial on how to use DSS or APP, let me know in the comments. And I know, some of you wanted me to show the blending of the long and short exposures, but I will do that in another video very soon. I know. But if you want to blend an image that was not well edited, you're not going to have much fun. So let's hop into Photoshop and get started with the editing. And no, I'm not gonna use the face cam for this one because I don't want to. Alright, here we are. This image you see right here is the stacked image that came out of APP. I left most of the settings at default. I only did some vignetting correction and the color background correction. This time I did not use the star calibration tool because the nebula itself, the color is in there, I just need to bring it out and I can do that by myself in here. As you can see, everything here, the core is already pretty bright. Usually, especially when you use HA or narrowband data, you won't see anything except the brightest stars in the image at the start. But this thing here, a beauty itself. So let's get started. This image here is 6000 by 4000 pixels, so pretty large. The first thing I'm gonna do, you see the stacking artifacts at the edges over here. They're just to the dithering and just slight ditches in position of the image. So I'm just gonna crop the edges away using the crop tool over here, and I'm gonna press Shift to get the proportions original, just to get these jagged edges out of the way. The thing I like to do, I like to split up the editing in 3 main steps. If you see my mouse going outside to the right here out of the screen, I got some notes on my second monitor over here. Oh, wait, that's the... nope. Here. So I usually, I use, of course, the non-destructive workflow, so you can go back to previous stages anytime. First, the first stage is stretching, then enhancing the EDSO and cleaning up. So let's start with the stretching. The first thing we have to do, this image is in 32 bits per channel, so as you can see over here, the adjustments, I can't do many adjustments right now. I will have to use the curves adjustment over here, so we can, you see, 8-bit and 16-bit only. So the first thing we need to do is to convert this image. We're gonna go onto image mode and 16 bits per channel, and the method, very important, exposure and gamma. The other methods are just not good. Now you can see some things has changed in this image. It's a little brighter. The first thing we need to do now is correct the background and the brightness. Alright, you see I opened the info panel up here. That's gonna be important very soon. The first thing we need to correct the brightest and darkest spots in this image. I'm gonna use a threshold adjustment layer, just gonna trim this so I can see the darkest spots. You already see how much data is in this image, and I can see already the first error of the flat frames over here. I guess some dust on the sensor. The darkest spot in the image is over here, I suppose. I'm gonna use the color sampler tool to mark this location and get the information. You can see down here RGB, and of course the brightest spot in this image should be some stars on the edges, I believe. I'm not gonna use the brightest one because that's just gonna be pure white. I hope I can get the right star over here. I'm gonna choose this one, it looks nice. Now we can delete the threshold layer and have the... okay, this star is bright nonetheless, so let's not worry about this. You can see the background you can see the background color and the white over here. So now we do the first levels adjustment to get the background right. So I click on Adjustments and Levels. You can also do that by going to Image Adjustments and choosing Levels over here. There it is. The adjustment layers are very important because we can turn them on and off to see the impact they have. Now in the properties of the adjustment layer, we will now move the RGB in the background to a complete black. The number we want over here is a 19 on R, G and B. So I'm gonna tune this. So in the bottom left corner we have 2019. Gonna move the red in a little bit more. And on the white you can see that blue is not yet that strong. I'm gonna go to the blue channel and scale this up. And now the blue in the dark edges already. Okay, now the initial levels adjustment is done. And the most important thing in the non-destructive workflow, the hotkeys you have to remember. So Control, Alt, Shift and E while selecting the topmost layer will print all the layers from under it, and you will have now the image without and with the levels adjustment. You see the background is darker, but the data in the image did not alter at all. And now the core is, I think we can see that, already way too bright. And now the stretching. I'm going to use the curves adjustment layer and just give it a small stretch. So over here, the darkest areas and the brightest areas, the data we want is to the right of this very steep thing here. The bar you see here to the left is the background sky. All the information we want is to the right of this one over here. So we're just gonna stretch the kinda dim data. You see the nebula got a little bit brighter. And I'm really not a fan of the also famous S-curve because I think that the data in the data on the black edges can be clipped very easily and you lose a lot of faint nebulosity through this one, so I'm not gonna do this. And the stretching, I'm just gonna use curves, levels to get the nebula so bright that I am happy with it. So again, using the hotkeys, and let's continue. Again, levels adjustment. Always make sure to have the background always even. So 19, 20, 19. Green is a little bit stronger. That's done. Print those. The next very subtle curves adjustment. You can see much more of the nebula coming out now. And this already looks amazing. Don't do too much in the curves adjustment, because the more you do, if you do lots of levels and curves which are very subtle, I believe that the result is much better than doing one big curve stretch, because you're gonna bring a lot of noise into the image. So just some very subtle adjustments. Print it, use levels again to get the background darker. 19, perfect. Come on, print. Draw the curve up. I think that's good over here. And I will continue with these steps until I think the nebula is bright enough. So let me do that real quick. Okay, I think this is good enough. I like what I'm seeing right now. And in the levels you can see we are almost at the max of what stretching could bring. So you can see the background almost to the left here. And if the background touches the left side, we can't stretch anymore without bringing in too much noise. That's the first stage, the stretching. I usually save the image as it is right now as a TIFF file for the purpose of this tutorial, and I already, of course, did this. So I'm gonna just merge these layers, because this file, this entire project right here, you can see is 1.25 gigabytes already. So I'm just gonna merge these layers down. And let's continue with stage 2, enhancing the deep sky object. You already saw it over here, and I think most of you are familiar with the astronomy tools and action set. These are just some Photoshop actions you can purchase. I believe it was $50 or 50 euros, but I use it for every image and it's pretty worth it. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is the enhance DSO and reduce stars. DSO, of course, for deep sky object. Stars in your image are, of course, a very beautiful thing, but if you photograph something that's in the band of the Milky Way, you're just gonna have too many stars and it's just gonna dim the object you actually want to see. So I'm gonna choose Enhance DSO and click on Go. If your image is very dark, this can take a lot of time, and I think it will take a lot of time in this one as well, because there's a lot of faint nebulosity. You can see the filters it's running through, and I will get back to you as soon as this is finished. Okay, the action is done. It took about 5 minutes, and the thing I like to do, of course, the background layer is over here, but if you press Ctrl Z, the action is actually plotted on top, so we can now see the difference that made, and it's already very astonishing to me that the DSO brightened up this much. So I like what I'm seeing, so I'm gonna call this Enhance DSO. And continue. Of course, the background has brightened a little bit. Again, bring in the levels. And plot it. And next, at this stage, I usually go for some noise reduction, because this image has been well stacked and registered. And the noise is not that drastic, but it's still there, especially in the bright parts over here. And so I'm gonna choose first space noise reduction and then deep space noise reduction. I think they don't do exactly the same thing. I think that the deep space noise reduction is for some color noise and the space noise reduction for the random noise. So I'm gonna run the space noise. I'm gonna run this. It's gonna be done pretty fast, I suppose. And you also see that it brought down some of our levels. So I always want them at 19, so I'm not gonna touch those right now. So do I like what I'm seeing here? This is what we had before. I hope you can see it in the recording actually. You can see the noise has been removed quite drastically. So I like what I'm seeing. The space noise reduction, not the signal to noise ratio. Next, the deep space noise reduction. Oh. Wait, I did that wrong. I need to be clicked in here. I don't need this. Click on here and then deep space. Okay, let's check what this does. Gonna use Ctrl Z again. You can see in the bright parts this... Okay, I think I was wrong. In the bright parts, nothing really happened, but the dark parts, you can see, if I maybe compare it over here. Oh, didn't want to do that. Bright and dark, you can see. I hope you can see it in the recording. The noise in the dark parts actually faded away much more, so I like what I'm seeing. Let's call this deep space noise reduction. The next thing I like to do is to pull up some colors and faint nebulosity using the Selective Curve stretch. I'm gonna make another layer, call this Selective Curve. Going to use the adjustment curves, and it's not the same as the adjustments over here, because now we can click with Control on some parts of this image. I think I'm gonna first pull up some of the faint nebulosity over here. With Control left click you can plot the point over here, and I'm gonna want to pull this up from the dark background color, which is over here. So I'm just gonna very subtle pull this up. I think that was too much. So difference before and after. Very big difference when it comes to the nebulosity. I like it a lot. Next I'm gonna do the same thing with the Running Man nebula over here because I like the blue color it has. Selective Curve 2. So the blue color over here, and pull it up from this one. Just a little bit. Of course, all the other data in your image will be stretched as well, but the region you chose in particular. So the nebula over here, of course, very good. The core, very bright. We can't fix this right now, but I will show you how to fix this in the next blending episode. Okay, and this thing over here is annoying me since the beginning, so this, I think it was just some dust on the sensor. I'm gonna use the spot healing brush to, and I'm sorry for the stars that are in there, but it's gone. So before and after of all these steps, the enhancing the DSO, I think it worked out pretty nice. Of course, the Running Man nebula over here, always beautiful. The next thing, either reducing the stars or boosting the color of this nebula. But the next thing I think I'm gonna do, you see all the dust trails over here. One action I really love is the local contrast enhancement. So let's see what this does. It shouldn't take that long, maybe just 10 to 20 seconds. Alright. No, it's not done yet. I was wrong. Now it's done. So let's see the before and after on the dust trails over here. And look at all the detail that is showing up over here in the nebula itself. Amazing. If you think that the contrast was enhanced too much, you can on this layer, of course, always reduce the opacity. Thirds is always good, so either 33 or 66%. Let's call this local contrast enhancement because I like what I'm seeing. And next, reducing the stars. There are, I know, two possible ways to reduce the stars. You can either make stars smaller multiple times in here. And I think I'm gonna do that one time now. Depending on your image size, this can take quite a lot of time to do multiple times. The action is done. Let's look at the before and after. You obviously won't be able to see much in this image. Neither am I. Let's look at some of the smaller stars over here. Let's zoom in very closely. Without and with the action. So the overall brightness has changed. It was dimmed just a little bit. But reducing the stars is a very important step, I think. Because the small stars, you don't need them in there, but the big stars are really giving their extra little touch to the images. So I'm just gonna name these stars smaller. And then the other way to reduce the stars, I'm gonna go onto Select, Color Range, Highlights. Just gonna choose the biggest stars in here. Of course the nebulosity is also chosen now, so I'm gonna deselect that. Oh. Let's do it again, Color Range, Highlights. I'm gonna deselect while holding Alt. It's gonna deselect the current selection. I'm going to draw. So I don't want to reduce this one, of course. And over here everything is alright. You can already see the core of the stars is chosen, but not the glowing outer edges, but I want to reduce those as well, otherwise it's just gonna create black blobs with some halo on the outside. So I'm gonna modify the selection and expand it a little bit by, I think, 5 pixels is enough. Yes. And maybe feather it just a tiny bit. 2 pixels. Okay, and now filter other minimum. And I think, I don't know why I can't see anything in the preview right now. Ah, okay. I'm just gonna go over here. Let's preserve the roundness, of course. If I pull this up, you see what I mean with the black blobs. Just very subtle, maybe 2 or 3 pixels. I'm gonna apply this. Deselect the mask, and nope, I don't like this at all, because the small stars disappeared now, but they also lost some color. So before and after, you see. And I don't like the look of this image as well. It was too much, so let's go back in the history and do the minimum again with 1.5 pixels. Okay, this is a little bit better. Some of the medium-sized stars are still there. The biggest ones haven't changed at all, almost. And I like what I'm seeing right now. So this is the star smaller layer. The next thing, the color boost. So you see, of course, with the light pollution in my area, everything here looks very much red. I know that the nebula itself looks kind of pink, magenta, but I want to pull this up just a little bit. I'm gonna make a new layer, call it color boost. And then also, like the selective curve stretch, do some selective color hue and saturation changes. So adjustments, hue and saturation. I'm gonna choose this tool, and while holding on this nebulosity, I can change the saturation over here. Let's put it at 1 where, oh, didn't want to do that. Again, adjustments, hue saturation. The master, this one. Let's boost this pink here just a little bit. I think +7 is enough. So the color changed. Oh, the color change was very subtle, but a noticeable difference in the end. And I think I like what I'm seeing so far. I think we can move over to stage 3. And of course save as a TIFF file in between each step. I like to do this so I can always go back and make changes to maybe the stars or the noise if I see too much noise in there after the stretching. So now we should save that as a TIFF file. I'm gonna just, for the sake of this tutorial, merge those, because the file size was already over 1 GB again. And now, step 3, cleaning up. I call it cleaning up. We could, of course, you see, my refractor telescope is not that well collimated, but still good enough. You can see the halo on the star just moved slightly to the left there. I know one way to get rid of halos of the stars, but I found it very hard to do this with the nebulosity around. I can maybe link the video I found, but I won't change this halo right now because I also think it looks kinda cool, I think. Also, you saw it maybe in the last video, in the image of the Pleiades, all of the big stars had halos, which were looking very red. But I left them there because I think they added very much to this image. So again, I love watching these images develop, the small just dust over here that stretches into the Running Man nebula over here. Just amazing. So next step, cleaning up, erasing the halos and some defects. I already did that over here. I'm sorry for that 1 star, but I'm afraid we won't see it again. And the background color of the entire image, I think very important. We see 14, 15, 18. So blue and green are just a little bit stronger. If at all, I like to have the blue stronger. So I'm just maybe pulling in some of the blue here. So it's gonna get, of course, very blue. But the difference this makes, it's just gonna get a more natural feeling towards our night sky. Because most people associate blue with the sky. And of course, in the night it should be black. I think I'm gonna either move the gray point. I think I'm gonna leave that there and use the white point in. So just a little bit of extra blue in there. I think that was too much. So these levels. Anything else I want to bring up right now? I think it looks good in there. Okay, last stages when editing your astro images, I always go, of course, for the correct crop. I want to have the right composition in the image. The nebula here looks pretty nice. I'm gonna maybe rotate this image counterclockwise. Always looks astonishing, I think. The Orion nebula, it's quite a drastic change if you rotate this image because it looks kind of stretched out to me to the left and right. Actually, I don't like this rotation. I'm gonna rotate it back. And one last thing, very important, the sharpening. But of course you stacked your images and you can apply some sharpening without introducing too much noise. There are 2 ways. You can either go to filter. I like to use the unsharp mask. You can just throw it on there and see the result it makes. And I don't like this one. I like to use some selective sharpening. I'm gonna make a new layer, call this sharp, create a new layer again, call this normal. On the sharp layer, I'm gonna uncheck the normal one. I'm gonna use the unsharp mask. Amount 100% is maybe a little bit too drastic. I'm gonna go with 50%. I already like the changes it did to the Running Man nebula. So this is the normal unsharp layer and the sharp one. And now I'm gonna use the eraser brush. No, I think I'm gonna use a layer mask, so you can choose layer mask over here. I'm gonna use the brush. Hardness all the way down, we want just some smooth changes. Change the opacity to maybe 50. And the thing with the layer masks, if you use a black brush and a white brush, it either conceals or reveals. So, and I always forget which one it is, so let's test it over here. Okay. I can see some black edges showed here. So black reveals. I'm gonna bump up the opacity. And on the normal layer is above here, and everything which we are going to erase now is gonna be the sharp layer. So everything you want to have sharpened, you can do this way. It's gonna sharpen the edges of the Running Man nebula. Of course, very important, sharpening the, I forgot the name of what this nebula was called. I think it was a French name, something. Sharpen some of the smooth nebulosity details. And you can spend a lot of time mastering this. You can see the difference already, much more black in there. And do it how you would like. I'm just gonna do some very easy and not that drastic changes right now. So the layer mask you can see over here. And I think I like what I'm seeing right now. The last thing I like to do, I know that a lot of people say no filter is always good, but since I already use a light pollution filter for this one, I always check the photo filter option, and I forgot to make a stamp. Go away. Let's make a stamp. Use the photo filter over here. And for these images I always like to use the cooling filters. That's too much. I think this one looks great. I'm gonna bump down the opacity to maybe 66. You can see already a lot of changes from the light pollution red to some more natural feeling blue. And I think I like what I'm seeing here right now. And since I already made the version of the image that I liked and uploaded it and showed it to you, I like what I'm seeing right now. Make a stamp. I always call this last one... Oh, wait. I always call the last layer that I'm happy with done. And save, of course, as a TIFF file. I usually call them like Photoshop Stage 3 done, for example. Save those, and for sharing I save them as JPEGs. JPEG over here. So the JPEG options, I always go for the maximum 12. The JPEG is not gonna be this big, maybe 12 megabytes of an image, because this image right here has now almost 800 megabytes, so the JPEG compression doesn't lose that much because you have edited the image the way you want. Alright, I like what I see, and this is how I edit my images. If you have any questions, of course, as always, you can leave some comments or feedback down below. I will try to add everything I did in the description, so you have kinda a list on what you can do if you want to follow my ways. The weather over here is not that good right now. I'm taking a lot of time, of course, learning for the next exams and collimating the retrogression telescope. And I think it's pretty close to done now. And the next thing I want to shoot is the Whirlpool Galaxy with this gigantic telescope, the focal length over 1300. So I think this image will be very cool. And until then, I wish you clear nights, clear skies. See you next time.